Hello and welcome to another episode of Interview Hour, your weekly podcast. We have special guests today. We're joined with American Fantasy Classics, or a portion of American Fantasy Classics. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Oliver Sweet.
I'm Alec Regan.
And I'm your host, John Riepenhoff, once again. All right. All right, let's get right down to business.
All right.
So if you guys could ask yourself anything, what would it be? If you could ask American Fantasy Classics anything.
Gosh, I was thinking today if it's
a really weird question.
Yeah.
But what were you thinking today?
I was imagining today if it came off as sort of like a fan club. If we we contact artists that we really like and then go way out of our way for them and then have a show oftentimes, or at least lately, without the artist even present. If it just seems...
Yeah, like if it seems like tribute art or like collaborations. Like especially like our last show was with an artist from Barcelona named Francois Gamma, who, you know, we only communicated via email. So, I mean, it was a collaboration, but like not in the sort of traditional physical way of we're, you know, making something together. So I guess, yeah, that's an interesting question.
I don't know if I'd necessarily want to ask myself that question. I don't know. It just, it was something that occurred to me today more so. It'd be nice to be able to step outside of our establishment and just like see if, I don't know, how we could maybe critique ourselves and what we're doing.
Because I think, you know, a lot of times you make a decision and then you spend a lot of time just sort of carrying out the decision that you made, and it becomes like, you know, boilerplate. Like this is sort of the way we've been working. So yeah, I haven't done that, you know, in a while. Step back and said, you know, what are we doing? We're just so used to the idea of it, but you know, also to you know, some people it's a really strange idea. We're so used to it now, you know, this way of collaborating.
Great. So what is American Fantasy Classics?
It's four people who share this gallery, studio, and living space. Alec and myself, and Liza Fluhoft and Brittany Ellens. And we started off interested in utilizing this kind of great space, sort of based on your recommendation, John, that we snatch this up and maybe use it as exhibition space. And it just was a process of figuring out a way to do it.
Yeah, we started just wanting to have an exhibition space without any sort of intentions of doing anything really specific other than just sort of organizing shows, and also we having a studio space connected to it. We're gonna, you know, use that to make our own work and possibly do some fabricating, do some sort of carpentry or building here and there, and it all just sort of fell together into this sort of collaborative effort where we're, you know, collaborating as a group, but then also with other artists. And like I said, we never set out initially to do that, but it just sort of worked out where, you know, that's what we started doing it, and it was really interesting, and we just kind of kept doing it, and everything we've done, has come from a sort of a really natural place. Like we just doing what we feel like is really interesting, as opposed to trying to conform to like, I don't know, like a traditional way of working separately, because we're like on top of each other in that space, and like also on top of like a bunch of other artists in that building and a little community, and so it just seemed to make sense to work together. And we all had this, seemed to agree on a lot of things, so it kind of seemed silly to like not be working together, like working on the same things, putting our efforts and skills together.
So you exhibit, you produce, you publish. Do you author?
I think we do, but it's all in direct correlation to the artists that we're showing. I mean, the authorship comes from a dialogue with the artist, whereas we propose ideas that perhaps we have that we just think would be great ideas for their world or the work that they produce.
Yeah, I think in some ways our medium is, other artists' ideas, and we're sort of authors with that, so yeah, in some cases we've come up with projects that we like propose to other artists that we sort of think of as their work, even though it sort of started from an idea that we had like about their work. So yeah, but I mean, authorship is one of the things that gets fuzzy with American Fantasy Classics, and one of the things we enjoy the most about it is how it sort of blurs that part of making things, And a lot of times we'll do projects just because we do them the way that we feel like they should be, and then the things that make us happy, and then at the end we sort of have to look and come up with like who is it, the author, what do we call it, how do you define the dimensions, the sort of boilerplate gallery notes kind of things you need to put down on paper so people can relate to it after the fact. Sometimes it's like really hard work to like figure out how to put those elements into a box, because we went forward without those things in mind, and then you come back and you have to figure out like what you did and who to credit, and for history's sake, essentially.
So who influences you?
I think we all influence each other to a certain degree. That's hard to pinpoint.
In a group
exactly.
With 4 people, yeah, there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening between us. And I also think we come from, we like the way that a lot of artists in this city have worked, sort of with platforms and platforming. I mean, you do, and a lot of other artists, Nicholas Frank, and I think, like Paul Drucke and David Robbins talked about platforming, and I mean, we were
former Milwaukee residents Scott and Tyson Reeder, who they've been a big influence on my practice in particular. I've worked for them for a little while.
So yeah, that's interesting. Like going back to saying that we all influence each other. I mean, we all each have our own influences that we then bring. So it's like this second generation of influence in like the end product. So, like if if American, like, if we're the sort of parents of American fantasy classics, then our influences and people we've worked with before, like Scott and Tyson, and they're like the grandparents of it, sort of. So there's lots of different art DNA kind of working its way in. It's a really diverse pool at the end. And, and then, the other artists that we work with then bring their own influences into it.
Who do you influence?
I hope we influence, at the very least, that the artists we're working with, and try and expand their ideas about their own practice. And I also hope we influence at least people who come to the shows and who are interested in looking at our work and our collaborations.
Do you think in terms of having an audience?
Definitely. But
Well, it comes back to where we're sort of our own audience. We I think we know something's good if there's a consensus that it's good, because we, sometimes if you're by yourself, it's hard to tell. So we're able to bounce things off of each other. But we definitely think about, there's a small group in Milwaukee and in River West, and hopefully out to Chicago and maybe New York, even, and LA, friends, but it's small, and they all have connections to the city. And we definitely think about bringing something to the table to show them. I mean, that's why, that's what we really like, working with artists from faraway places to, like, inject a little bit of diversity into our little community here.
it is a very small community. It would definitely be nice to try to expand, and the whole networking end of it is sort of hard and alien to us at this point still. I mean, there's a lot of outlets for it, but it's still, it's hard to figure out who our audience is in a lot of ways. And I think we're going to be starting to experiment with that a little bit in the near future, attempting here now to send a show, this current show that we have with Francois Gamma, down to Mexico City to be exhibited there. And there's also been talk of doing a satellite gallery in other states or other countries coming up within the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, everyone just did a little bit of traveling, and it seems like an interesting idea to just take shows or just take the practice different places. Maybe not, definitely talking about moving the Francois Gamma show. What's the gallery called in Mexico City?
It's called Preteen.
Preteen Gallery. But also just moving the idea of, doing this to places and meeting people and seeing if they want to work together.
You guys are active in Milwaukee here, and with your venue here in River West as well. You guys won the Mary Knoll Award this year, or this previous year, and we'll be showing at Innova in the fall. But you've done multiple projects with people not living in this region. 3 shows with Portland-based artists, and a book with Brenna Murphy, and your current show, which you mentioned, with Francois Gamma from Barcelona. Can you talk about a little bit more about who your community is?
Well, that's, I think, in bringing these people in from elsewhere, it's an attempt to maybe sort of solidify this, like, ether that is cyberspace, where I guess that's how we find out about these other people. I mean, they're not present here. This is the first time that Brenna Murphy has been physically present in Milwaukee, and Francois Gamma's work is almost never actually physically present anywhere, due to the nature of, I mean, he largely just does animated GIFs that have been shown around the world, but as projections. And we've created actual physical objects of his work. So we're sort of hoping, I don't know, maybe inventing an audience or attempting to do so.
I think what we're discovering is that people are really, especially people working on art and interested in art, are just really friendly, and they want to consume art and produce it. And if you kind of offer them an opportunity for that, they'll take it gladly and be gracious about it. Both Brenna and Francois, we had no previous relationship whatsoever other than we'd seen and enjoyed their work online, and we just contacted them out of the blue with an idea for a project, and they both were, really great about it. So, I mean, we're just, that's something we are just discovering. And it's really exciting. You can really just, as long as you're, willing to add to the conversation, people will converse.
One thing that excites me about what you guys are doing is you are really connected with people here in this community, and you're seeking out things that you value and showcasing them and actually supporting them through helping produce their work. But you're also seeking out people from all over the world and somehow finding ways to relate to them, even though they're otherwise perfect strangers. Can you talk a little bit, or can you identify what you're looking for that you find in people here in Milwaukee, and the people that you're finding and you're bringing in from kind of different parts of the country and the world?
I suppose we've never tried to define certain qualities before, sort of, I think we just go forward saying, oh, we like this, we know it when we see it. But, looking back, I think a lot of the people we've worked with have made their work accessible from anywhere. So it's not something that we saw one image of somewhere in some fleeting way. Both of these artists, you can really get a sense of what they're doing and what they're thinking about pretty well just from exploring what exists online. So I mean, and I don't know if that's we love artists that are online. Just these artists have been, they've created a way to really get in touch with their work. So yeah, so I don't, like I said, I don't know if we're necessarily interested in web artists, but these artists just have made it easy for us to like them.
You think maybe they were generous by providing a lot of different blueprints?
Yeah, it's a great way
for free, and then you guys could kind of go through and select and kind of pull out what you wanted to see manifested in different ways.
Absolutely. And I think, they're all about in the same age group too. And starting, I think, in the mid-'80s, most people were kind of growing up with the same things. And I feel like we draw on similar influences, shitty sci-fi, post-apocalyptic cinema, and weird Mutant Ninja Turtles or something like that. There's this weird energy that's sort of present that I feel like it's just not directly referenced, but there's an aesthetic that's easy to relate to kind of no matter where they're from. And these just remnants of, we share a really similar sort of popular culture from our childhood I'm not sure if that influences all generations, but it seems really prevalent in this one to be tapping into this sort of, I don't know, hypnagogic mess of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like there's kind of a psychedelic influence in a way, and I think maybe that comes from what you're talking about, science fiction and kind of this fantasy world that's created for children, but through media. But I wonder, is there more to the fantasy part of American Fantasy Classics than what's in the title?
Perhaps. I think we were searching for something ultimately totally generic sounding that could easily be some grocery store book publisher, or could be applied to any number of different things. And we have so many different plans and ideas and projects that kind of all fall under the same name, that to create something as modular, I think, as American Fantasy Classics was important. So, I mean, yes and no, I guess, to answer your question.
So it is it's an umbrella identity that kind of all of your four core members' identities are all be able to kind of be pulled into.
Yeah.
And there's another thing that happens too with, as a group, and then you name yourselves like a band. There's this sort of branding thing that happens, and then everything that you do that people can associate with the name sort of starts to define it more than the collection of words. So every time we do something, we think about how it like bounces back and forth between what that name kind of means, being sort of generic, but also referencing certain elements of the pop culture that we were talking about growing up with, and then how we sort of maybe are expanding that to mean different things, or like relate to maybe an art practice, or like like different sort of cultural signifiers. Yeah, fantasy is a funny word when we're talking about also like contacting artists and saying we're gonna build a whole show for you based on some weird webpage you made. So also it's kind of like this Make-A-Wish Foundation thing.
That's a good way of putting it. Sort of.
Yeah. You talk about your core members, but I've kind of viewed American Fantasy Classics as like almost this family endeavor with like couples involved, but then it feels like you guys have like kind of these friends and different kind of people that kind of chip in, and you're constantly having like a fifth member or as your guest artist, and sometimes you guys are initiating the projects for your exhibition space here, but other times you're taking on projects as almost as a client-based scenario. How did this come about that you guys had such a kind of unconventional approach towards production and authorship, and because it's pretty unique?
It came about, I think, just from trying. I think we actually made a lot of almost aggressive efforts to be a part of the art community here, and we wanted to help out where we could, and that was really instantly recognized. And so,
do you mean through being like a studio assistant type, or
yeah, starting out like doing studio assistant work for different artists in the community, and then there's a number of other small spaces that popped up very recently, some that have come and gone, and some that are still around, where, I mean, through our willingness to be present in the art community, we ended up offering right away to help out. I mean, if they needed help patching their walls, or if they needed help shipping something out, or
making pedestals,
yeah, whatever it was. And I mean, word travels fast in such a small town, so we were getting calls and offers and stuff pretty quickly with people who had more like skilled labor for us, different things that they wanted us to try to tackle.
And it's, you know, it's fun. It's fun working on somebody else's show, even if you're just there to help them, you know, bolt something to the ceiling or something like that, because you know how, and they maybe don't. So just, you know, being a part of something coming together feels good. And that is kind of how we just, you know, before, I guess even before we were, you know, definitively doing this as like a practice, we were just doing it as friends of, you know, people who were making things and being active. And so it just sort of folded into, you know, doing it sort of as a structured kind of entity.
It really clicked, I think, the first show that we did, which was with the Green Gallery at the MDW fair, when we wanted really badly to do our first show with this artist, Brenna Murphy, who the only work that she had was web-based, these sort of endless sculptural tapestries of just 3D computer art, and trying to solve the problem of, like, how do you show art that's already accessible to anybody and everybody who can get on a computer. I mean, we didn't want to just project the website. We wanted to do something that would make it worthwhile, not worthwhile, but make it worth putting into a gallery, as opposed to just taking something that already was existing just fine on its own and putting it into a gallery.
Yeah, that's a good point about the web art. I mean, there's really no, I don't know, you don't need to project Brenna's work. I mean, it's great, you know, in your living room,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, and it just, I mean, it wouldn't enhance it in any way to just print it, so we started talking to her about building them like as sculptures, following the same formula that she was doing, and just these patterns of objects. And I mean, that was definitely, as our first actual show, that was really definitive and important for us, and how we would approach every other show from then on.
Cool. So, how do you see this going forward? How would you like to see the project develop and continue and grow?
Well, you know, in the near future, we've got the Mary Knoll Fellowship show coming up, and we're going to be doing a really large project involving a lot of collaborators, and some in, you know, someone in really big ways and some in really little ways, but it's going to be sort of epic version of some of the things we've been doing. And then after that, you know, we're not really sure what we're gonna do. I think we'd like to start thinking about some of the things we were talking about earlier, like having it travel around a little bit, maybe move some of the process around, meet some new people to work with, and move some of the shows around. So, I mean, that's what, you know, we know we're going to do in the immediate future.
We want to keep it alive, and I think that will just be another level of problem solving, because I don't think we're going to continue to live on top of each other with the gallery and the studio and everything all.
Not forever.
compacted. Yeah, we're grown men now, and it's time to move on. Live just one boy and one girl at a time.
And we're also all artists in our own right, and we all have ideas that don't necessarily fit into American fantasy classics. And I think for us, some of those ideas are starting to pile up. So it's there's that too. We definitely want to explore some of our own urges.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll definitely always, it'll sort of always exist. I think we did a project with the White Box Painters last summer, which is a performance, public sculptural, public drawing group that was really active maybe 10 years ago in this neighborhood, and they've since split up and are on different sides of the country, but there's still this window for White Box Painters projects. When any one of them ends up with an idea that seems like it would fit better as a White Box Painters project, they are still open. The lines of communication between them are still open, and they can still function, even if it's few and far between 10 years later across many miles. And that's sort of what happened last summer at our space with the White Box Painters. I don't think they'd worked together in a really long time. And so, there's a precedent for that, at least, that, anytime we, even much farther down the road, if something seems like a great project for American fantasy classics, it can totally still happen. Like the artists that we're working with, obviously now there's not this necessity of physical proximity. And that's sort of the great thing about the way we communicate now, is that we're not really separated by that much.
Mm-hmm. And Milwaukee's always going to be family. So even if we all end up going other ways, we'll be in touch with the city and coming back for things here and there.
Mm-hmm. It seems like the American fantasy classics kind of grew out of your guys' interest, like special interest, but it also was like really nicely paired with kind of the reality of your lives, like the jobs that you had became resources for production, and kind of opened up certain specific types of ways that you could manifest these, digital blueprint art pieces. So do you guys, do your day jobs, are they influenced by your interests, or is I know it's probably a kind of somewhere along the sliding scale, but does the American Fantasy Classic kind of drive kind of how you seek to actually, pay the rent, make money, do your day job? Because it seems like you guys are different from other people who just have these, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fantasies where you actually get up and you move and do something about it, and you incorporate you get other people involved, and then this dialogue, which you guys mentioned a couple times, starts to happen, and then the project becomes bigger than just the ideas. It becomes a new idea. But I'm curious about this kind of balance between that project, that kind of creative endeavor, and the reality of just paying rent, being artists that aren't quite living off economically off their art. If there's plans for, continuing getting into fields that help generate bigger, more ambitious projects, or are those things, do you find that those things are coming crashing together in kind of a sustainable place?
Yeah, I guess the idea is to always be doing something interesting, or that's sort of the ultimate goal. And later, it would be nice to be able to make a living off of doing something interesting all the time. And American Fantasy Classics, I think, in some ways represents the beginning of trying to take a stab at that, as being like this really multifunctional organization. But as far as like, yeah, our day jobs, I mean, I work in different modes of like producing things, and you know, it's not always interesting, but maybe the process is, and it always, you know, feeds back. The more things I'm capable of, you know, the more options I have when like ideating or like thinking of how can we make something or realize something, and the more sort of options at my fingertips, the more things I can come up with, and more combinations and things. So yeah, I mean, I try to have a job that not only sort of allows me to, you know, pay the rent and work on art, but maybe expand my capabilities, or at least learn something new that I can feed back into my sort of creative time, fun time.
I don't think I'd be working at Digicopy if it weren't for the gallery. Seems like a pretty solid resource. And there's opportunities here and there with the gallery to make a little extra money, but it would, on one hand, it would be nice if we could just make all our money that way, but I think there's a certain benefit to our shows being pretty strictly a commercial, and we're not trying to sell anything. We kind of think about that when it's up. It's like, oh, maybe somebody would want to buy this.
Yeah,
that would be cool if they did, but I mean, that's not a motivating factor. So first and foremost, it's making good work versus making sellable work, which I'm not really sure. I think the gallery might suffer at this point with 4 people sort of struggling to collaborate. I mean, it's this sort of always civil, but like collaboration is just sort of a constant argument in a way, and you bring money into that, and I feel like less would get done, would be less exciting. It would be probably
more like a job.
Yeah, it would turn it into a job. Whereas we're doing this for just like out of
love.
Yeah, total love. we want to experience. I just have this experience, and it's a really great opportunity to meet a lot of really great people. I mean, we wouldn't have had an excuse to meet half the people we've worked with without the gallery. And now, I mean, it's cool to have a place to stay in Barcelona. We end up there.
You guys talked about, I forget who mentioned it, but like world creating before. And I wonder if that, I mean, we were talking about that in kind of an aesthetic sense, but I'm wondering if some of what you guys are talking about now, this kind of balance between your labors and then your kind of your creative labors, is some attempt at bringing the art into your lifestyle in a way where you're kind of living in this kind of fantasy in a way, but it's like totally grounded in reality. Is that far off, or?
No, I don't think so at all.
No. Definitely not.
I mean, you know, it's we sometimes we'll be, you know, really deep into a project and have been working on it heavily for a really long time, and you know, we'll find ourselves in some really odd situation that to us seems totally normal, like, you know, trapped in a freight elevator with, you know, some strange object and stack of materials at some weird hour. And that's, what we've been doing with all of our free time for, weeks or something. And we'll sort of look at each other and be like, what do normal people do? Like, what are they doing right now? What are they doing? Are they playing volleyball with their like office league or like, so sometimes, so it's definitely like creating this really bizarre world. You have to stop and, and make sure you recognize that it's awesome every once in a while.
We have a phone here. I'm looking for our call-in number in case there's any normal people out there who want to call in what they're doing right now, but I can't seem to find it. It might be on our website, riverwestradio.org or com or something. All right, we just have a few minutes left here, but can you guys tell me what are you cooking these days in terms of food?
We just made it. Brittany and I just made an awesome frittata with mozzarella cheese and eggs and pesto. It's really good. It's really easy to make. Really good breakfast.
I'm working on trying to make ramen from scratch. I just got all the kombu and bonito flakes, and I'm working on my broth. So far, it's really good.
That sounds excellent.
Yeah. But it's still, I don't know. It's better than the like 15-cent package, but it's not as good as the stuff you get at the restaurant.
Are you talking about broth or noodles too?
Everything, yeah. I actually haven't been able to find good ramen noodles, so I've used the 15-cent packs and just ditched the powder and put those noodles into my own broth and throw some greens and eggs and stuff in there.
John, I know you love pizza, and I just saw that they're opening a pizza museum somewhere. I thought maybe I sent you
Philadelphia. Yep. Among other things. Yeah. All right. So Oliver has been running a tape label for a while under the name Techno Snake. It's kind of a
Talisman tapes.
Talisman tape. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Techno Snake is sort of like I don't know, some collaborative gas that exists within Talisman tapes.
I'd like to play a little of that as an outro. Maybe you can talk a little bit about if that's influenced the collaborative process that you're kind of in right now.
It probably has. I've always been, I don't know if I get bored working by myself or what. I always want to get other people around me involved and like bounce ideas off of them and help them out if I can and see if they can help me out. So, and that's, this project has been going on semi-steady for 5 or 6 years now, maybe more, but not much of a web presence working on it still. I think I just have one thing up on our Bandcamp website, talismantapes.bandcamp.
This one's giving me a hard time playing, but
I feel like Talisman Tapes has played a role in a little bit stylistically, at least, or maybe with some of the attitude that American Fantasy Classics has, or at least maybe you don't recognize it, but I can definitely see sort of this weird. Maybe it's that same thread that you were talking about, sort of this pop culture, vaguely pop culture influence that we're tapping into. I can see it existing in Techno Snake and Talisman Tapes.
Yeah, it's a sort of disintegrated version of popular culture.
Right.
Reversion to primordial ooze.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you, John.
Oh, one more thing. If someone wanted to hire you to produce something, what should they do?
They can email us.
Yeah. Probably email Alec. I'm bad at email. And what's your email address?
Well, they can find out everything they need to know, I guess, at AmericanFantasyClassics.com.
Thanks for listening.